What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound brought to you by the Hockey News. I am your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined today by Michael Augello and Jack Williams of the Hockey News. And we've got lots to talk about today around the hockey world. But do want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now you can get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right. In the meantime, guys, we've got lots to talk about. Apparently, this is, we were joking before we were recording, this is going to be the injury edition of the wraparound. It seems like there's a lot of injuries going around. Want to start up in Montreal. So, the Canadiens have lost 4 in a row. They've lost 6 of their last 7, and they've got lots of injury issues. So it really doesn't look like it's going to be getting better for them anytime soon. You've got Caden Gooley out 8 to 10 weeks. You've got Alex Newhook out for 4 months. Kirby Doc out 4 to 6 weeks. Patrick Laine out 3 to 4 months. I mean, the list just keeps going. Mike, I'll start with you. How important do you think this next month of hockey is going to be for the Canadiens in determining whether or not they have put themselves in too deep of a hole? You know, can they stay competitive even with all these injuries that they're dealing with right now?
The next month is going to be really important for the Canadiens. I mean, right now they're 10-6-3. They were really hot at the beginning of the season. Jakub Dobish was fantastic early on, but these injuries, I mean, Kirby Doc and Patrick Laine are chronic injury problems. They've been injured their entire careers. Caden Gooley is a big loss on the blue line. Alex Newhook, that was a gruesome injury that he had. I mean, their problem is they had that great number one line. They have a couple really good defensemen in Lane Hudson and Noah Dobson. And they just don't have the lineup depth to sustain all this. So it's up to Kent Hughes. He's got to go out and try to make a deal. I mean, Emma, right now, that number 2 center that we've talked about ad nauseum, that's just a little bit of the problem. Now I think they need to add more than that. And they do have a lot of draft picks and a lot of young assets. So I think they're going to have to pick and choose and make some deals that will help them stay in the race.
Jack, what do you think? I mean, do you think Montreal is going to be able to weather this injury storm in order to stay competitive this year?
Yeah, I think they're really in a weird place right now, especially considering how close things are in the Atlantic Division right now. I mean, it's still early on the season here, but you're getting to a point where once we move past November into December and then kind of that long point in the season, especially with the Olympics, that things are going to start to spread out a little bit more. You don't really want to get behind the ball in that situation. As well as Mike mentioned, there are a lot of guys on this list that you kind of expect to be injured, but Newhook and Gooley on there is kind of the big loss, especially Newhook, who was really offensively contributing on there as well. With this team, it's just keeping the offense up and just finding ways to win as much as they can like that. A lot of these losses that they've had in the last few games haven't been by wide margins. I believe they got blown out in 2 of those last, I think, 5 or 6 games. 3 of them were overtime results. The other one was a 1-goal game. So, I mean, they're competitive in some of these matchups and stuff like that when you're looking at that final score there. But it's just about being able to keep it close, getting over that 1-goal hump, and they really just need to stay in things in general, or else, like you said, things are going to really spread out as you get past November.
Well, as I mentioned early on, the Canadiens certainly not the only team dealing with lots of injuries right now. We've got the Toronto Maple Leafs in a very similar position. They've now lost 5 in a row. They've also been dealt some really tough news on the injury front lately. I mean, you've got honestly an even longer list of injured guys. You got Brandon Carlo on IR. Nick Waugh is out with no timeline to return. Anthony Stolar's on IR. Austin Matthews, Scott Lawton, Chris Tanev. I mean, some of these guys even have no timeline to return right now. So that is just really, it's been brutal going for the Maple Leafs here. Mike, given the poor start that the Leafs have had, compounded by all of these injuries, do you think that they are going to stay competitive in the Atlantic this year?
Well, the one advantage for them right now is that everything is so tightly compacted. You have Buffalo losing 8 of their last 9, and then they win 2 games in a row, and now they're tied with Toronto, and Toronto lost 4 of their last 5. But both of them are only 4 points out of a playoff spot. So when everything is so tight, being able to turn things around and win a few games gets you right back in the race. I mean, the injury situation, as you said, is dire for them. It's 3 centers and it's 2 right shot defensemen. They were so desperate that they had to claim Troy Stetcher on waivers just to have somebody on the right side. And he's not a bad journeyman type of guy, but he's not, and he's not Carlo and he's not Tanev. There is no timeline on Carlo. There is no timeline on Tanev. Brad Living did meet with the media today and said Roy is going to be out a couple games. Matthews could be back on Saturday. Lawton skated at practice today, but they're not saying whether he'll be back now or later in the week. But so there is some encouragement there, but the injuries are the key players. And overall, and Brad Living said this today, they're just not playing well. They're defensively inept. And this is a team that was, in the top 10 in goals against last year, goals allowed. And this year they're at the bottom. And if they continue to be at the bottom, they're not going to make the playoffs.
Jack, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of it, especially just going back to the whole Atlantic division of it all and just how close and compact things have been recently as well. I think in just the Atlantic division, everyone is waiting for the team that not just slips first, but falls first. A lot of the teams, you're seeing a lot of them kind of slip here and there, but they're catching themselves a little bit more. Toronto seems like they're slipping on a different side of compared to Montreal with the Atlantic division. Toronto seems to be a little bit behind the ball when we're talking about points and wanting to get back into that race a little bit more, even though how tight it's been. The big thing is defense as well. We're seeing still decent goal production from the Maple Leafs in the stretch here as well. They're still putting up 3 goals, I believe, per game and stuff like that. The other team maybe be scoring 5 in that situation as well. So the offense is putting the puck in the net, but it's just about stopping the team that's coming their way. It's stopping the opponent. That's been the big focus here. And you have guys out like Carlo and Tanev who are defensemen that are putting in big minutes there. And those, might not be higher up in the lineup, but these are guys that are putting in big minutes and you're taking a big chunk of what you want to get out of the defense there. So, like Mike said, these are big players that are out here. And it's just about filling those gaps there. And this situation for this team might just be score, score, score. Honestly, you might have just I think it was the Vancouver and Florida game. There was 13, 15 goals in that game. It might just be that situation for Toronto where it's just keep putting the puck into the net until the buzzer sounds, honestly.
Best defense is good offense, as they say. I think you mentioned Florida. They're one of the teams who, of course, they had the original injury issues this season. I mean, they're missing some big players and Barkov and Tkachuk, of course. But one guy who has really emerged for them in the midst of all of these injuries and has kind of kept them afloat with a phenomenal start to the season has been Brad Marchand. He is currently on an 11-game point streak. He's got 10 goals and 17 points in that span. He's now tied for second in the NHL in goals with 13. He's got the highest goals per game in the NHL right now. Again, still early and probably not sustainable. But Mike, did you anticipate Marchand playing such a pivotal role for the Panthers in the regular season at 37 years old, especially because, this is a guy who was brought in at the deadline last year, really to contribute more to the playoff push?
No, I did not expect him to be the leader in scoring. I mean, we knew that he would step up into a bigger role because of the injuries that you mentioned. But, when we were talking about who was going to step up for the Panthers in the absence of Barkov, in the absence of Tkachuk, we thought it was going to be Sam Reinhart or Sam Bennett, who just signed an 8-year deal, or Anton Lundell stepping in to Barkov or moving higher up in the lineup. They really haven't done that, and that's the reason why Florida right now is on the outside looking in. Now, they're only a point out of a playoff spot, so, they're supposed to get Tkachuk probably back in mid to late December. And if they do that, then they probably right the ship. They just have to stay close until then and get good goaltending from Sergei Bobrovsky. And if they do that, then they'll probably stay in the race.
Jack, did you anticipate that? I think we can all probably agree. No one really anticipated this from Brad Marchand. But how important do you think he's going to be in keeping this Panthers team afloat in a playoff race?
Yeah, I mean, his play's just been critical right now, especially with this Panthers team that just doesn't seem to go away in any situation at all. So, I mean, you're having a guy like Marchand who's been, good for so long, stuff like that, just popping up kind of out of nowhere and just giving them their surge they need to get into that hump into the playoffs and then maybe do even more damage in that second half of the season, possibly going after the top spot in the Atlantic Division. And then even further, possibly going for that three-peat there. But I mean, his play has just been dynamic. There are some guys in this league that just age is just a number to them. I think with Jaromir Jagr, who is like 50 and is still, I believe he's still playing over in Czechia. But I mean, there's some guys like in this league who are just built different, especially him. I think he's on an 11 game point streak right now, amongst all of this as well. So his play has just been ridiculous right now. He's going to play a critical role in holding the Panthers sound when everybody comes back to health and then seeing what they'll be doing further down the way.
Definitely. Well, there is actually a former Florida Panthers player who's been a part of one of, I would say, the more surprising storylines in the NHL early this season, and that's the Chicago Blackhawks. They are actually getting off to a pretty decent start, I think more than a lot of people expected. And a big part of that is Spencer Knight. So, of course, Knight acquired by the Blackhawks in that trade that sent Seth Jones to the Panthers last season. Knight's got a 7-3-3 record, 924 save percentage, 2.42 goals against in 13 games. So, I mean, Mike, how do you think that Knight might actually be proving himself, proving his worth as a former first round pick and potentially showing that he can be the Blackhawks long-term answer in net with this?
I mean, that was the whole plan when they made the Seth Jones deal. The Seth Jones deal, the way he was playing in Chicago was sort of a boat anchor around that team. But the payoff was getting a potential franchise goaltender in Spencer Knight. That was the goal when he was with the Panthers. They thought he would be the guy and that Bobrovsky would be phased out. And then he had his issues, and thankfully everything is straightened out with him. And now, I mean, Chicago, I mean, they were probably looking at somebody like Drew Comesso or maybe going outside of the organization to find a goaltender. Well, they found one. And right now, if you would have told me that the Chicago Blackhawks, the way they were constructed last year, would be tied for the lead in terms of goals allowed in the NHL with 47, I would have said I would have eaten my hat, because there was no way I thought that was going to happen. But I saw firsthand when they played Toronto on Saturday, they are playing pretty good defensively. And Knight, I don't think he's standing on his head, because I've always thought he was a good goaltender. He keeps this up. We know that there's a third goalie open for the U.S. Olympic team. We know the top two are Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger. I mean, Thatcher Demko isn't jumping off the page. Neither is John Gibson. Maybe Spencer Knight, as a younger goalie, would be the third goalie for Team USA.
It's possible right now. Jack, what do you think? How important do you think Knight is going to be to this Blackhawks team? Not necessarily just this year, but as they look to build a contender into the future.
Yeah, I think Knight's just going to be playing a critical role here this season with the Blackhawks. I know my Nashville audience might not like to hear this too much, but I did grow up in Chicago during the era of when the Blackhawks had won all those Stanley Cups there. And a lot of it had centered around just good goaltending there as well. You could go back in history and see it as well, from Ed Belfour, Dominic Hasek back in the 90s. They got the Blackhawks to the Stanley Cup final there. Nikolai Javy-Bulin was there when the Blackhawks were really starting to get kind of out that dark era. Then you had Corey Crawford during the Stanley Cup era. You have Spencer Knight here. I'm not saying they're going to win a bunch of Stanley Cups, but you have a young era of players here that are finally developing an identity for the team a little bit more, kind of understanding what they are and really getting the offense going, really getting the score going, finding some stability on defense as well. But Knight has been just kind of a rock there in general, especially when the defense may be developing a little bit more. Knight and net, I mean, he's had, I think, like 8 30-plus save performances. I believe he had 40-something against the Canucks recently. I mean, he's playing very, very well, and it just gives this young group some stability really there to kind of just do what they can and not really worry about too much of what's going on their end of the ice. I like what Mike said as well, talking about Spencer Knight being in the mix for Team USA. Connor Hellebuck is really just kind of the lockdown guy there when we're talking about the Olympics as well. But if there's a guy playing well, you want to kind of get a little bit more into the mix, especially talking about going up against Canada, kind of being a US-Canada type of ordeal when we get a little bit closer to the Olympics. Having that support there with Knight is going to be huge. So if I was Team USA, I'd definitely give him a look.
All right. Well, the Blackhawks, as we said, gotten off to a maybe surprisingly strong start, at least surprising compared to what we saw from them last year. One team in the Central Division that did not get off to the strongest start, but has been heating up as of late is the Dallas Stars. So they have 5 straight wins now. Jason Robertson, now a big part of that. He's a guy who, again, had a slow start for this team. And as Jason Robertson goes, so go the Dallas Stars, it would seem. Robertson had a natural hat trick on Saturday against the Philadelphia Flyers. He's got 9 points in the last 3 games. He's got 23 points through 19 total games this season. Robertson's a guy that we've talked about here, Mike, on the show before. He's 26 years old. He's in the final year of his 4-year contract with the Stars. He's currently making $7.75 million a season. The Stars don't have a lot of cap space to work with next summer. So again, we come back to the same question I feel like we've asked here before. What should the plan be for Robertson? If you're Dallas, do you try to sign him or do you trade him?
Well, their issue, and they're fortunate in the sense that they have most of their core players all locked up on long-term deals. Rantanen, Wyatt Johnston, Rupe Hintz up front. On defense, Miro Heiskanen, and they just locked up Thomas Harley, Esa Lindell, and their goalie, Jake Ottinger. So they have, and even secondary players like Matt Duchene, they have locked up long-term. Now, you're right that they don't have a lot of cap space next year. The one advantage that they have with Jason Robertson is he's got another year before he becomes a UFA. So they could qualify him, and it might be a big cap hit, but they could qualify him on a 1-year deal. And then once Tyler Seguin's contract drops off, which is almost $10 million, then you could pay him. But then he's getting closer to hitting the open market. And as we see this year, with only Artemi Panarin and Alex Tuch out there in free agency, whoever gets to July 1st of a particular year is going to get overpaid because there are so many teams out there that have cap space. So it all depends. It comes down to, does Jason Robertson want to stay in Dallas? If he does, he's going to have to work with them to get paid. He may not want to work with them. He just may want to get paid.
Yeah, I think that is a big question here, a big factor in all of this. With, as you mentioned, the cap going up, we're in uncharted territory now with what we're seeing with all these extensions, guys getting locked up for long term while they still can. I mean, Jack, what do you think happens here if you had to guess with Robertson and the Stars? And do you think that it's going to be possible for them to lock him in long term?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree a little bit too with just the whole, it might just be up to what he wants at the end of the day, especially considering the situation that the Stars are in with their cap currently. Now, I'm just talking about moving further down the road with that and stuff like that. There's ability for them to clear that out a little bit more, especially with the Sagan contract, and move some stuff around and stuff like that. Every team seems to find a way somehow, especially with Josh Robertson. I feel like the Stars would want to do as much as they could to really clear up their cap and be able to lock him down again there. But I think a lot of it too is just depending on if he wants to stay there or if he's really just chasing a bag a little bit more, especially with the salary cap going up. Someone could really come along and just be like, here, and just throw a giant number at him and he could take that as well. But it's also, yeah, just big on if he wants to stay in Dallas as well. Dallas is a contender, has been the last few years. They've been close, but there's been teams that have been closer, honestly, teams that may not have a better looking salary cap as well. But, Dallas is still a contender and stuff like that. I think it's just going to be up to him if whether or not he wants to open up those no negotiations a little bit more, and just how much he wants to hear.
And a factor here will also be that Dallas in Texas is a no state tax state. So They will say, take a little bit less, but you're going to get more of it because it's a no tax state. They have an advantage over most of the league.
That is very true. Very true. And I knew you were going to bring that up, Mike. You're always good for that. Now, want to shift over. Of course, we've been talking about teams dealing with injuries. Dallas actually among them. You mentioned Matt Duchene, Mike, and they're also without Jamie Benn as well. So dealing with a lot of injuries there. But of course, another heavily injured team right now is the Vancouver Canucks. However, while the Canucks are struggling to find their footing, a good sign is that Elias Pettersson is quietly having a great start to the season, which is exactly what you need if you are Vancouver. Pettersson's got 19 points in 21 games. He's got 8 points in his last 4 games. So, Mike, even if the Canucks continue to struggle, how important is it for them to see Pettersson get back on track after his last few seasons? Or do you think maybe this is more of a cynical twist to it, but do you think it would be more important to see him on track when they're actually doing well as a team and not just when the pressure is off a little bit?
Well, I think right now that they were concerned early in the season with the way Pettersson was playing. The only category he was leading the league in was blocked shots, and you don't want a guy you're paying over $11 million being, unless it's a shutdown defenseman leading the team in blocked shots. They need him to score. They need him to score often. They want him, get past the whole JT Miller situation with him. He's their number one center. They didn't trade him before the no move clause dropped on July 1st. Lately he has played like the guy that they thought they signed and paid, and they need him to do that. I mean, let's just say this. If he doesn't do this, then Quinn Hughes is definitely gone, because it's a situation where they need to be consequential. And I mean, I personally think that Quinn Hughes is going to end up in New Jersey in a year or two, but then everybody else thinks that as well. But if they have any chance of keeping him, it's going to be Elias Pettersson and players other than Kiefer Sherwood scoring for the Canucks.
Nashville Predators legend Kiefer Sherwood doing the big things over in Vancouver. Jack, what do you think about Pettersson's start to the season? This is a guy who, historically has maybe kind of turtled under pressure, but how important do you think it is for the Canucks to see him getting off to a strong start like this?
Yeah, I think it's a situation too if he's finally playing the same way that that the Canucks have been wanting him to play, and then that really got him introducing into the Canucks system. I remember years ago seeing the Vancouver Canucks really pick up all these really good young players. I'm like, oh my God, this team's going to blow up. They're going to be so good. And they've just kind of hung around that wild card spot a little bit, and they've fallen below it recently, especially now with not a lot of great things happening there right now. This is something that they really need to cling on to, really continue rolling with, and maybe could just spread out more and more along the lineup as well. I mean, this is a star player that they've wanted to get more out of, and they're finally getting more out of as well. They could have not asked for a better time for him to get going. He is the support that they're getting from him right now, and they just need to continue rolling with that. But I mean, it's just he's just an offensively talented player. I think he just had a really bad year last year. It's nice to really seeing him getting going again for sure.
Well, you mentioned not a ton of good happening in Vancouver. Speaking of which, Mike, let's talk about the Buffalo Sabres. So the Sabres were criticized, of course, for dealing JJ Peterka to the Utah Mammoth this summer. But despite that, got to admit, Josh Doan, who is part of the return in that trade, has actually been very impressive to start the season. He's fourth on the Sabres in scoring. He's got 12 points in 19 games. He's averaging just over 15 minutes of ice time, and he started playing a more prominent role on the power play as well. So, in your opinion, do you think Doan could end up being a big part of the Sabres' future? And I would think that's kind of what's expected if you're going to get him in a trade for a guy like Peterka.
Well, I do think that the way he's played so far, he could be a big piece of the future. But this is typical Buffalo Sabres. I'll go back to, I think it was 2018 when they traded Ryan O'Reilly to St. Louis, and then O'Reilly ended up winning the Conn Smythe and a Stanley Cup with the Blues. JJ Peterka is, and in that deal, Tage Thompson was a throw-in in the deal. And he's emerged to be a big piece for the Sabres, but it wasn't planned out. It just, after a couple years of struggling with injury, Thompson ended up being that player. In this instance, the big key to this deal was Michael Kesselring, a right shot defenseman who could play with either Owen Power or Rasmus Dahlin. Well, he played 8 games. I think he had no points, and now he's hurt for the second time, and he was seen walking around in a boot in the press box. So it's just by happenstance that they got a player like Doan, who is extremely talented, who played really well with Arizona. Then when the franchise moved to Utah, he seemed to struggle a bit. And now I think he's realized, because he's playing a top 6 role because of all the injuries the Sabres have had. So he's really taking advantage of that. But I do not think it was planned that Josh Doan was the cherry on top of the sundae that they picked out. This was just by happenstance, just like Tage Thompson was a few years ago.
Well, Mike, not wanting to give the Sabres any credit for this, but regardless of who deserves the credit, Jack, do you think that Doan could really end up being a big part of the Sabres' future here, whether or not it was intentional?
Yeah, I think it's just about just trucking along with the way things have gone. I feel like that's the theme of this episode, where with the injuries, it's just been like this person's really stepping up now. And Doan's kind of the one that's kind of been a little bit of a surprise here and stuff like that. But I think it's just rolling with what he's been doing. It's funny. I think he's on a similar point pace as Peterka is right now in Utah. I think he has 13, Doan is 12. Somewhere around that area. But I mean, it's just with especially Buffalo, I think it's just rolling with what's going well, what's going good and stuff like that. Especially like Mike mentioned, if he's playing in a top 6 role and he's doing well, just leave it, keep going with it and stuff like that. And then when you start seeing the team as a full team with full health and players coming back, throw him into that mix and see how he gels with those top guys, just as a team, as a cohesive unit. Just I think with Buffalo are teams that are just looking for something or anything and stuff like that. And you need to roll with what's going well. And I think Doan is just something that they really need to grab onto right now.
Yeah, well, now just staying on track with teams that are struggling in a lot of different ways right now. Since we've got you here today, Jack, of course, we've got to talk about the Nashville Predators. So, Preds definitely continuing to struggle. They've lost 9 of their last 11, including just a brutal loss in the second game of the Global Series in Sweden against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, it seems like one of those potential turning points in a season where something has to happen. It feels like this team, they can't do nothing. A change needs to be made here. So there's a lot that's been talked about. Did they change the coach? Did they trade players? Do they actually have a crazy turnaround and go on another 18-game point streak? But in your opinion, Jack, which do you think is going to be the most likely thing for the Predators this season? Do you think it's going to be a major trade of a guy like Stamkos or Marchessault, maybe even Saros? Do you think they make a coaching change, or do you think they actually turn it around?
It's right now the mindset really we've kind of been getting a little bit is just they're just playing the same way, like nothing's wrong, which is clearly not the right thing they need to be doing as well. Realistically, the thing that would look like it would make the most sense is to make a coaching change a little bit more. I don't know if coaching is the problem here on the roster right now, but when you need some sort of shakeup in the moment, stuff like that, and I'll get into the contracts in just a second. But talking about a shakeup, the big thing is always about the coach and making some sort of personnel changes or something like that. Again, I don't know if the coach is the biggest problem here right now, but they need something to shift things up a little bit more. That might be it when we're talking about player trades and stuff like that. I mean, the players that look like they would have a route out or getting them on a way out, they just are on really bad contracts right now, and it's just they're not producing either. So the big thing is, if you're going to put them out there or they want to leave, it's about other teams looking at it and be like, do we really want to pick them up? I mean, Steven Stamkos is the big name here. He's on a larger contract, not as big as Saros, which I'll get to in a second. But I mean, it's more of he's not producing. I know he's like a future Hall of Famer. He has a lot to credit for his career, but it's just not going for him right now. Jonathan Marchessault is on kind of a longer contract as well. That 5-year one's going to expire, I believe, when he's like 35. He might be 35 right now. I think he like 38 or something like that. He's going to be a lot older. That's why the Golden Knights got rid of him in the first place, and he signed with the Predators. He's not producing a ton of points as well. And then you go to Saros, who is playing really well. He's been such a critical piece to this team this year and just everything he's done. He's been standing on his head a lot lately and just hasn't been getting too much help from the defense this year. But it's the contract. He's on an 8-year contract. It's just he's tied down to this. I know a lot of teams have interest in him, but then you look at the contract he's on and taking that on is just a big ask for a lot of teams right now. And then there's the theme of just getting better. I don't know how much more this team can really do in getting better and turning around things and stuff like that. The only thing I really think of is just bringing in this younger core, this younger group that they have drafted, just bringing them back in, just spamming the hell out a bunch out of it, just bringing them up more and more and more, getting them into that lineup and just seeing where that goes, or just adapting to that rebuild mindset at this point. I think that might be the biggest thing of just being like, we're not good right now. We might need to start losing and think about a different mindset of the organization. That might be the way to go. But as of now, they are just going about that everything is fine. So that's what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I think too, when you talk about the contracts, I mean, there's also the big elephant in the room there is the movement protection that's built into those. I mean, Saros has a full no move. Brady Shea, Steven Stamkos all have trade protection.
Mhm.
So they're not going anywhere unless they want to. So that's a big piece of it as well. I mean, you talk about the young pieces as well, the young players, and you have some bright spots. You've got guys like Luke Evangelista, Matthew Wood is playing extremely well. I mean, Mike, when you look at this Predators team, it seems like maybe you just need to, like Jack said, shake things up. But what do you see happening here in Nashville?
Well, I unfortunately I don't think that I see them firing the coach. It doesn't seem that Barry Trotz wants to do that. I mean, one of the big, but Barry Trotz should be handcuffed to the radiator and prevented from going out and signing free agents, because Marchessault, Stamkos, and Brady Shea, the big three from last year, in 57 games this season, has 8 goals and 9 assists. That is the exhibit A of why they're struggling so badly. Now, it's funny, the parallels with them in Toronto. I know they came out, Elliot Friedman reported on Saturday that Toronto is looking to make hockey trades. Well, I think Nashville is a team that is probably looking to make hockey trades. I mean, they have young guys, as you said, like Wood and Brady Martin's back in junior, who are probably going to be the future of the team. You're going to keep Saros around probably because he's a good goaltender, and even if they rebuild in 2 or 3 years, he's still going to be under contract. But these guys in their 30s, I don't think you can hold on to them. They're not doing anything, and they might blossom someplace else. Stamkos could go to Montreal or Vancouver or Toronto and have a renaissance in his career. But clearly, he's not going to have that renaissance in Nashville. It's just not working.
It is not. And on that uplifting note, if you would like to read any more about the Nashville Predators, the Buffalo Sabres, any of the other teams that we've talked about today, of course, head over to the Hockey News to get all of the latest from all of our great team of writers there. Of course, the Hockey News has been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start, is a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Wraparound. We do appreciate you tuning in, listening to us talking some hockey. We will be back with an all-new episode next time. For Mike Augello and Jack Williams, I'm Emma Lingan. This is the Wraparound, and we will see you next time.